Welcome back. In this step, we are going to create a VPC using Terraform. So we are going to create VPC, Subnet, Internet Gateway, all these resources in a step-by-step manner. So for detailed documentation about each resource, at the end of this respective section 0402 meta argument depends on, you can find all the documentation links here. Okay, so I have also provided the documentation links here, so you can reference them. So I opened it and then put them ready. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code and start with our resource one, creating a VPC. So let's say command space or control space based on your environment, and then say resource. Okay, and our resource is going to be AWS_VPC. And name of my local name of my VPC, I am going to just say VPC dev. And if we see, the important means like the required attribute for any VPC is CIDR block. Okay, so I'll define the CIDR block as 10.0.0.0/16. Okay, and if you want to give a name for your VPC, so define the tags here and define the name as VPC-dev. Okay, so if you want to reference its equivalent documentation, so it is here. Okay, so the required attribute, required argument is CIDR block, and then tags whatever you want, you can specify them. Okay, so CIDR block is the required argument for us. Okay, so we have provided that. So now the VPC is completed. So the next thing is the subnet. Okay, so we'll create a subnet resource now. So I'll say control space resource, and I will say AWS_subnet. And my subnet name, I'm going to give the local reference for my subnet name. I'm going to give VPC dev public subnet -1. Okay, and now I'm going to provide the values for it. Okay, so if you want, you can reference the subnet here. So it will have the VPC ID, CIDR block, and then even in which availability zone you want to use it. And also you can provide more attribute, which is map public IP on launch. Okay, so optional parameter, but as we are dealing with the public subnet, we are saying that specify true to indicate that instances launched into the subnet should be assigned with a public IP address. So default is going to be false. So if we put this, so the EC2 instance launched in the subnet will also get the public IP assigned for it if it is a public subnet. Correct, right? So let's move on and then add the VPC ID and then CIDR block for our subnet, and also availability zone, and also map public IP on launch. Okay, so those 4 parameters we are going to add now. So first thing is VPC ID. So let's learn this. So VPC ID always will reference as resource type dot local name of the resource dot ID. Okay, so now my VPC here is AWS_VPC. This is the resource type. Dot local name is VPC dev, and if I say dot ID, now I'll get the VPC ID here. Okay, so for this VPC ID, so resource type dot local name dot ID, and next thing is CIDR block. Okay, so control space and then CIDR block, and provide your block, so whatever you want to provide. So 10.0.1.0/24 will be my CIDR block. And next thing is in which availability zone this subnet should be there. So this is an optional argument, but I want to provide it, so I'll provide it as US East 1A. Okay, and one more optional argument I want to provide is map public IP on launch. Okay, so default for this is false. I'm going to make it as true. So why I am making it as true is I'm going to launch a EC2 instance in a public subnet. So in that public subnet, the public IP should be auto assigned for it. So for that purpose, I have done this. So we have created a subnet now. So the next thing we are going to create is the internet gateway. Okay, so now we have completed 2 things here. So one is VPC subnet, next is going to be the internet gateway. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and start writing for that. Okay, so I'll say control space in my keyboard and then resource and AWS underscore internet gateway, right? And name can be, I'll say VPC dev IGW, okay, local name of my internet gateway. And for this, if you say control space, you'll find something called VPC Id will be the important parameter. Why? Because whenever we create a internet gateway, we associate that, we attach it to the VPC. So that will be the required argument here. Okay, and how we are going to get the VPC ID? So we need to get the VPC ID using resource type, okay, dot local name of that resource, which is VPC, right? VPC dev dot ID. That's all. Okay, so this is good. And next thing is we are going to create a route table. Okay, so let's go ahead and then create the route table now. So again, one more time, we'll select the control space resource and I will say AWS underscore route underscore table, and name of my route table I can give as VPC dev hyphen, I'll say public hyphen route hyphen table. So I said VPC dev public route table is my local name of my route table. And route table also, whenever you create a route table, it is also an association with the in which VPC you are creating the route table. Okay, so now let's get the VPC ID, which will be the required argument. Okay, and copy the same thing. Okay, so resource type dot local name dot ID. So now we have completed the resource 4, which is creating a route table. So now the next thing is create route in route table for internet access. Okay, so let's create a route now. Okay, so let's create a route for internet access. So let me take this and find for the resource AWS route. Okay, so we are creating a route now. So route, and name of my route is local name of my route. Okay, so VPC dev public route. Okay, and first things first here is going to be route table ID. Okay, so which is route table ID we need to provide. So how you can provide the route table ID is based on the route table resources type and then local name dot ID. So let's take this and paste it here. Okay, dot this one. Okay, local name of my route table dot ID, right? So if you want, you can reference the route here. Okay, so it looks this way, right? So you provided the route table ID first, and next thing is destination CIDR block. Okay, so 3 things which are important is in which route table you are creating this resource, right? In this route table I am creating this route, right? And the next thing here is the destination CIDR block. From entire internet access I need to get the access. Okay, so I'll say destination CIDR block, so I'll say 0/0. And the next thing is, and from which internet gateway you need to get this internet traffic. Okay, so which will be called as gateway ID. So here you need to provide the internet gateway ID. Again, same concept. So resource type is AWS internet gateway, right? So let me copy this, internet gateway dot local name of that internet gateway, right? And dot ID. That's all. Okay, so now this should create the route inside this respective route table, in this respective route table, with the destination CIDR block as entire internet and IGW as this respective gateway. And next is associate the route table with the subnet. Okay, so now we are going to associate the route table with the subnet. So we should have a resource for that. Okay, AWS route table association, AWS underscore route underscore table underscore association, right? And we'll create the name, local name as VPC hyphen dev hyphen, okay, public hyphen route table associate, VPC hyphen dev hyphen public hyphen route hyphen table hyphen associate. Okay, and now what you are going to do is, inside the route table you are going to associate the subnet. Okay, usually that is what you are going to do. So what we need to do is, we are going to create a resource for association, route table and then subnet. So first things first, here is route table ID. Okay, and my route table ID, you know that this is the route table ID. Okay, so let me copy this. Okay, so let me copy this, or go here and copy the route table resource, type is route table and paste it, dot route table local name, right, and dot ID. In the same way we need to do this should be ID, not VPC ID. Okay, and next is, we also need to search for the subnet ID, right? So we are associating the subnet and the route table here. Okay, so let's go to the subnet, and this is the subnet resource type. So we'll go here and then provide the resource type is subnet dot subnet local name, right? So I'll provide the subnet local name dot ID, right? So now you have completed the creation of entire VPC resources. Finally, you also create a security group, and this should be done. So if you want, you can reference these things and then see, it should be more or less same in the same inline from documentation perspective. So route table association is also completed, subnet ID and route table ID. And the next thing is, we are going to work on the security. So for security group, so let's create a resource for security group. So I'll say control space and resource and AWS underscore security group, and local name of my security group, I'll give it as dev VPC SG, and name of my security group, I will provide the name for my security group. So where dev VPC default SG, and I'll also provide the description, so which I'll say dev VPC default security group, and it will be associated with a VPC ID. So I'll say the resource type as AWS underscore VPC dot, and local name is VPC dev. Okay, so VPC dev dot ID. Okay, so now the next thing here is defining the ingress and then egress rules. Okay, so we'll go to that respective documentation and then copy the ingress and then egress. Okay, so I will say this, copy this. So now let's start with the ingress. So in ingress, I'm going to say allow port 22. So from port is 22 to port is 22, and CIDR block, it is going to be okay 0.0.0/0 from entire internet. Okay, so let's define one more ingress rule here, right? And that is going to be allow port from 80 and then 80. Okay, so this looks good, and egress is simple, so which is like outbound from port and to port. And if you want, we can add the description here. Okay, so if you want, we can add the description, so like this, and say allow all IPN ports outbound. So allow all IPN ports outbound. So this completes the VPC resource creation. Okay, so in our next lecture, we'll focus on creating the EC2 instance and then elastic IP, and then start testing the entire thing. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Until then, bye bye. Thank you.